What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. It's good to have you here. I'm excited for this one, but I guess I'm typically excited for any time I do, an episode. But this one in particular because I finally got my hands on the Korg Drumlogue. This is one that I've been wanting for years. I remember when they had announced it and then they had delayed it and everyone was wondering, where is our Drumlogue? We want to know what's going on. And then they finally released it, and, I watched a lot of the content creators' videos doing deep dives into these. There was some negativity, in reference to how it functioned and then the price. And so I was like, well, the time's not right then for me yet. So I waited. They did some firmware updates, and the price slowly lowered. And here I am now. I've got one in my possession. The time felt right. The price felt right. I wanted to give my own opinion on this because I'm like, you guys might be familiar. I've made videos on the Korg Minilog XD, lots of them, deep dives, how to do this, how to do that. And so I was like, well, I might be actually pretty familiar with how the interface works on these things. So it shouldn't be like too extreme of a learning curve for me. So we'll get into that and kind of my opinion, is it really as bad as people say it is? Sometimes negativity seems to rise louder than positivity. And so in this case, I'm going to try to give my unbiased, honest opinion about this instrument. So what is the Korg Drumlogue? It's obviously some sort of a drum machine, right? But it says on here, hybrid drum machine. So what does that entail? So it has 11 voices. 4 of those voices are analog, and then the rest are digital. 6 of those voices, however, are samples. So it's an analog drum machine, it's a digital drum machine, it's a sampler, and it's also got the multi-engine that you see in other log instruments for adding people's effects and synthesizers. So yes, this thing also has a synthesizer in it, a monophonic synthesizer, which is actually really, really nice. As for the sampling section, there's 32 megabytes of memory. It allows up to 128 programs or patterns, songs, depends on how you look at it. And they separate that also by kits. So you can save your own personalized patches for instruments or, your percussion, which is actually pretty neat. So you don't have to kind of tweak every single time. You can recall those, and they label it here as kits. So you have programs and kits. If we take a close look at the Drumlogue, at the bottom, you can see you have 16 digits, and that is your sequencer, 16 steps in a sequencer. It is expandable with the expand buttons up to 64 steps. And then in addition, you can pattern chain. So you can, I guess, by definition, you can create songs on here by chaining up your patterns or your sequences. When you take a look at some of the other things on here, you have some fine-tuning knobs for your analog drum part and also for the sampling part. So that's nice to have these knobs because it's important. Some of these tuning knobs, the decay, you have drive. Something sort of frustrating, though, is that you have to hold down the shift button to go to some of the other instruments with these knobs, but you find a work around it, and it eventually you just make it happen, You have all of these super tiny Volca, style knobs up here. typical with like Eurorack synthesizers as well, but also typical to the Volca line. These are all of your voices, so it's nice to have this because it's your individual volume control. I'm not crazy about the size that they chose for these, but it is still a nice feature to have like that knob per functionality on here. You have these 4 knobs, which you will probably end up using the most. They are rotary knobs, but they're your parameter controls, and you use that alongside the page up and down. And, it's how you really tweak the sound. You can do pretty much a lot of the same things that you can do with these knobs over here with the parameter control knobs. So this is where things start to get a little frustrating for a lot of people. At first for myself, when I wasn't as familiar, but I've done a lot of manual reading. I guess that's something to keep in mind is it's not as simple to just get in and go and know how to do everything right when you jump into this. It takes a little bit of a learning curve, which seems to be typical of, those mid to higher end drum machines anyways. But, all excuses aside, menu diving isn't very fun for most people. You have the option to add a delay. There's also a reverb. It's nice because you can really assign those individually to each voice and tweak it how you want, which is a really nice feature to have. And then one really unique and important aspect is there's this master function. The master is really important because on analog drum machines and just, I guess, drum machines in general, you need to have some sort of post EQ. I guess you don't need to, but it really helps with your sound. And having that option on here, if you learn how to use it properly, this really takes your sound to a whole nother level. So if you haven't utilized that function, definitely look into the master controls and what you can do with those and how to use those properly. Taking a look on the back here, there's also some really neat features here. On the back, beyond the obvious, this is 9-volt center positive, typical of Korg, but it's not, you can't charge it. It doesn't have a built-in battery, like some units might. This doesn't have that, but, you can take it with a power bank and take it portable that way. So you have 2 USB sections here. You have like an input and an output. The input, you can connect it with a MIDI controller. This was a huge issue at first. This thing, unfortunately, you can't really take advantage of this unit entirely without some sort of MIDI controller. So they cut corners on that aspect of the design, condensing it all. Is it as bad as it sounds? Not really. I mean, MIDI controllers can be as cheap as like $50. You can get the little, drum pad style. I'm using my key step because the main thing I'm doing when I'm plugging it in is I'm using that with the synthesizer. You can trigger your samples and your drum stuff on here. It's kind of clicky clacky, but it's not super bad. Could it have benefited from some soft pads? Yes, but it's not an end all. And then the out is USB-B. USB-B, to connect it to your computer. This is how you're going to load samples on here. And it's actually pretty simple. You just have to follow a format for putting the files on here, but it's pretty simple and works out really well. You have MIDI in and out, so it's nice they didn't sacrifice that for the 3.5 millimeter. They put, the 5-pin DIN, I think is what it's called, MIDI on here. And you can use that, for the controllers as well. You have sync in and out, 3.5 millimeter, which is great for connecting it with your other gear, whether it's, Eurorack or other synthesizers. That seems to be more of a standard thing, these 3.5 millimeter for clock syncing, playing things, at the same tempo. You have an audio in, which is cool. It literally will play that sound in here. Here's a really unique aspect that I'd like to see happening on more instruments. You have 4 assignable outputs. So straight up. You can say, well, on channel 1, I want it to be a sample. On channel 2, I want it to be the analog kick, and channel 3, the analog snare. Channel 4, maybe the synthesizer. And that's a useful feature to be able to pick and choose what's going out and where. If you like to do post-processing, running it through a mixer or running it through effects, EQ, whatever it is. That's a nice function to have. And then you have your standard stereo outputs. These are 1/4 inch. And then you have the mono option and then a 1/4 inch headphone output. So all in all, they put a lot of thought into this. There are some issues I still have. Like I was saying before, I really feel like this had a lot more potential if they didn't cram for space. I don't know why they didn't just extend it this way or extend it out this way to just make more room for more knobs. I'm someone who likes knob per function, or I also like to have some assignable knobs. That would have been great because your parameter knobs, there's so much time spent page up, page down, twist this, twist that. I got to go back over here or that. So, that kind of leads me into my next section. This isn't super great for live performances. I had tested it out just in my studio. I didn't take it out and play a show or something. I'm just saying this would go really well with a chaos pad or some sort of control for adding on repeats for the steps, or that fade in, fade out with the cutoff. That would go really well alongside this, in addition to having a MIDI controller. That would take this thing to the next level. Something else that I'd like to see, maybe in a firmware update, I feel like this could be something you could absolutely do, is controlling the sample's pitch with a keyboard controller, via MIDI. That would be really nice, because when I'm sampling and triggering stuff, it'd be cool to say, okay, just this one sample, and now I want to control the pitch, because I have to manually go in and switch in motion mode. It's nice that I have the option, but you have to manually go in motion mode and then twist that to change up its note characteristic or something, or pitch characteristic. I'd love to see an update that could correct that. And if there already is a way to do that, please let me know in the comments, because that would really improve performance for me while utilizing this. It's a little cheap, plasticky, but it's got good snug on the knobs. They're the Log series knobs. They're quality knobs. The buttons are kind of clacky, and I kind of already discussed that. Maybe they could have put some little pads down here for triggering it, but it's not the end of the world. The price, I remember when they dropped this thing, I think it was around $600, and I was like, based on what I'm hearing, this doesn't sound like a $600 instrument. This is typical of Korg. I feel like they're always releasing something at top dollar, and then you wait a year or something, and then it drops $100, $200, dollars, and that is where we're at right now. This thing, I believe, in the US goes for around $399. I grabbed this for $300. I saw the opportunity and I snatched that up really quick because I knew I wanted one of these. I wanted to try it out for myself, and that price felt right to me. This thing has lots of potential and it's lots of fun to play with, and I'm continuing to have lots of fun. You got to be patient. You got to read the manual or watch videos on how to utilize this thing to know how to navigate and control it properly. I would say that this is kind of like a good mid-level drum machine, I can put all of the samples from 808 drum machines, Lindrum, other things that people might like, they can put on here because it's a sampler, You got a little analog section here too, your kick, your snare, and your toms, 2 toms. And they sound great, especially when adding EQ to it. It sounds wonderful. Something else that would have been nice is if they did want to continue using these skinny little knobs up here, it would have been nice to make these translucent like the tempo knob, and then kind of like on the Volca modular, like as it's triggered or how loud it is, that intensity, that the light will get stronger or brighter. That would be nice, you know, every time it's triggered or sampled, for finding it, because it's spread out and not lined up perfectly with how it is at the base. And so sometimes your eyes have to really zoom in and get close to see, what am I looking at again? And then these are really skinny, and you really want to fine tune and tweak those. And that's kind of hard to do when you get these little tiny knobs, you know. And I guess you could always add on caps, you know, on top of these if that's your thing, but then you might cover up what they are. That's just kind of my thoughts too. And it was interesting that they opted for these plasticky wooden side panels and made them black. I'm not sure, but on the Minilog XD, I'm not sure if that's real wood. I think it might be real. You guys will have to let me know. But that could have been nice on here. That would have looked really good. Some wood tones to kind of give it more of a natural human feel to it, you know. Would I recommend this to people? I would now. I would recommend this to people at this lower price range between $300 and $400. This is kind of like a good all-in-one little unit here, and I've already been having lots of fun playing it every single day. I love it. I think it's great, and I would love to see in the future more firmware updates, and maybe we'll even see a Drumlogue XD down the road. And yeah, I'd love to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below. I'm going to include links if you guys are interested in this or anything else that you've seen in this video or have questions about. Check the description section. If you enjoyed this video, leave a thumbs up. Anyways, thanks for watching this video, guys. We'll catch you next time. Peace. Boop.